Pregnant wife signs divorce papers at Christmas while his family laughs. What happens 5 years later leaves them speechless. When 6 months pregnant Elena Carter is handed divorce papers at her in-laws' Christmas dinner while the entire family laughs and mocks her, she signs them with tears streaming down her face and walks out into the snow with nothing but her dignity. Her husband Marcus chose his manipulative family over her and their unborn child. 5 years later, Elena has built an empire from nothing, and when the Carter family faces financial ruin, they come crawling back. But Elena has become someone they never expected, and the revenge she's planned is colder than that Christmas night. Elena Carter's hands trembled as she held the envelope her husband had just given her. "Open it," Marcus said, his voice cold in a way she'd never heard before. Around them, his entire family had gathered in the lavish living room of the Carter estate. Christmas Eve dinner had just ended, and the fireplace crackled warmly while snow fell softly outside the windows. It should have been magical. Instead, it felt like a nightmare. "Marcus, what is this?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. She was 6 months pregnant, her belly swollen with their child, and she'd spent the entire evening enduring his mother's pointed comments about how she'd trapped Marcus with the pregnancy. "Just open it," Marcus's mother, Victoria Carter, said from her position by the fireplace. She had a champagne flute in her hand and a cruel smile on her perfectly made-up face. "Don't keep us in suspense, dear." Elena's fingers felt numb as she tore open the envelope. Inside were legal documents, pages and pages of them. The words swam before her eyes, but the header was crystal clear: Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. Her husband had given her divorce papers on Christmas Eve. "Marcus," Elena looked up at him, searching his face for some sign that this was a joke, a misunderstanding, anything but what it appeared to be. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. "My family has made me see reason. You're not. You're not right for this family, Elena. You never were." "I'm carrying your child." Elena's voice cracked, loud enough that everyone in the room turned to watch. She saw Marcus's father, Richard, leaning against the mantel with an amused expression. Marcus's sister, Veronica, was recording on her phone, barely suppressing her laughter. His brother, James, was smirking behind his whiskey glass. They were all in on it. This was entertainment to them. "Are you?" Victoria asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How can we be certain? Marcus tells us you went to your mother's house for a weekend 3 months ago. Who knows what you did there?" "What?" Elena felt like the ground was tilting beneath her feet. "You can't be serious. I visited my sick mother. Marcus, you drove me there yourself." "That's what you told him," Victoria continued, moving closer. She was wearing diamonds that probably cost more than Elena's childhood home. "But the Carter family cannot risk bringing a child into the world when we're not certain of its parentage. We have a reputation to protect." "This is insane." Elena looked around the room desperately. "Someone tell them this is insane. Marcus, you know this baby is yours. You were there when we found out. You cried, for God's sake. You said you were happy." "I was confused," Marcus said, still not meeting her eyes. "My mother helped me see clearly. You're not one of us, Elena. You never will be. It's better we end this now before the child is born." "Better for who?" Elena's voice rose. "Better for you, for your family. What about our baby?" "If it is Marcus's baby," Victoria interjected smoothly, "we'll arrange for appropriate child support. But you'll sign an NDA and you'll never speak to the press about this family or your association with Marcus. In exchange, we're offering you a very generous settlement." Elena looked at the papers in her shaking hands. She flipped through them, her vision blurred with tears. Settlement: $50,000 and a used Honda Civic, in exchange for her silence about the marriage, about the abuse she'd endured from this family, about everything. $50,000 to disappear. "This is a joke," Elena said. "We've been married for 3 years. I gave up my career to support you, Marcus. I moved away from my family. I isolated myself because your mother said it wasn't appropriate for a Carter wife to work outside the home. And this is what I get: $50,000 and a used car. It's more than someone like you deserves, Victoria said, her mask of politeness finally slipping. You were a secretary when Marcus met you, a nobody. We allowed you into this family out of the goodness of our hearts, and this is how you repay us: by trying to trap our son with a pregnancy. I didn't trap anyone. Elena's voice broke on a sob. We wanted this baby. We planned for this baby. Sign the papers, Elena. This came from Richard Carter, speaking for the first time. His voice had the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Sign them and walk away with what we're offering, or refuse and walk away with nothing. Either way, you're walking away. Elena looked at Marcus one more time. Please, don't do this. I love you. We're supposed to be a family. Marcus finally met her eyes, and what she saw there broke her heart more than anything else that had happened tonight. There was nothing. No love, no regret, no recognition of the 3 years they'd spent together. Just cold indifference and, underneath it, relief that he was escaping. Sign the papers, Elena, he said quietly. Around them his family waited. Veronica was still recording. Victoria was smiling. James was refilling his whiskey. Richard was checking his watch, bored. Elena looked down at the papers through her tears. She thought about fighting, about lawyers and court battles and forcing them to acknowledge her rights, her child's rights. But she was 6 months pregnant, alone, with no money of her own. Marcus had insisted she close her bank account when they married and use the family account that she'd never been able to access without permission. She had no job, no recent work history, and no savings. Her mother was sick and couldn't help. She had no one. Fighting the Carters would take money she didn't have and time she couldn't afford. They'd bury her in legal fees. They'd drag her name through the mud. They'd make her and her baby suffer just to prove a point. With shaking hands, Elena found the signature lines and signed. Each stroke of the pen felt like she was signing away her soul. But what choice did she have? Excellent, Victoria said, plucking the papers from Elena's hands the moment she finished. Now, there's just the matter of you leaving. I assume you have somewhere to go. It's Christmas Eve, Elena said numbly. It's snowing. Not our problem. Victoria's smile was triumphant. You have 2 hours to pack your belongings and leave the house. Anything you don't take will be donated. 2 hours? I've lived here for 3 years. Then you'd better hurry. Elena looked at Marcus one last time. He was staring at the floor, jaw clenched. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of guilt. But he said nothing, did nothing, just stood there while his family threw his pregnant wife out into the snow on Christmas Eve. Fine, Elena said, her voice hollow. I'll go. She walked toward the stairs leading to the bedroom. Her bedroom, where she'd slept beside Marcus for 3 years, where they'd made love, where they'd talked about baby names and nursery colors just weeks ago. Behind her she heard Veronica's voice. Oh my God, did you see her face? That was priceless. I'm totally posting this later. Laughter, they were laughing. Elena climbed the stairs, each step feeling like climbing a mountain. She packed what she could in 2 suitcases, clothes, some photos, documents, the few pieces of jewelry that had been hers before the marriage. Everything else, the designer clothes Marcus had bought her, the expensive jewelry the Carters had given her, all the trappings of the life she'd thought was hers, she left behind. She couldn't bear to touch any of it. Exactly 2 hours later, Elena walked out of the Carter mansion for the last time. The snow was falling harder now, covering her car, the 15-year-old Honda Civic with 150,000 miles that was apparently all she was worth. She threw her suitcases in the back, got in and turned the key. The engine sputtered but started. She sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, looking at the house that had never really been her home. Through the windows she could see the family gathered again, laughing, celebrating. celebrating her departure. Elena placed a hand on her swollen belly. "It's okay," she whispered to her baby. "It's going to be okay. We don't need them. We never did." She drove away from the Carter mansion, tears streaming down her face, with nowhere to go and $50,000 in a bank account that wouldn't even cover a year's rent in this city. But she didn't look back. Not once. The women's shelter in downtown Seattle wasn't what Elena had imagined for her life, but it was warm and safe, and the volunteers were kind. She stayed there for 2 weeks after Christmas, using the time to figure out her next steps. The $50,000 wouldn't last forever, but it was enough to start over if she was smart about it. Elena rented a studio apartment in a less expensive part of the city, $800 a month, barely big enough for a bed and a small kitchen, but it was hers. She bought used furniture from thrift stores. She ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. She watched every penny. And she started planning. Before she'd met Marcus, Elena had been working on a business degree at community college. She'd been a secretary at a tech startup, learning everything she could about the business, about software, about how companies grew from nothing into something. Then she'd met Marcus at a charity gala where she'd been helping coordinate catering. He'd been charming, attentive, so different from his family, or so she'd thought. The marriage had ended her education and her career. But now, with nothing left to lose, Elena realized she could go back to both. She re-enrolled in community college, taking online classes that worked around her pregnancy. She devoured every book she could find on business, on entrepreneurship, on building something from nothing. Her daughter, she'd found out it was a girl at her last ultrasound, was born on a rainy April morning. Elena named her Maya, which meant dream and illusion, because Maya was the dream Elena had left, and the Carters' perfect family had been the illusion. Elena's mother, despite her own illness, traveled to Seattle to help for the first month. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," her mother said, holding baby Maya while Elena rested. "But honey, I think this might be the best thing that ever happened to you." "How can you say that? I'm broke alone with a newborn." "But you're free," her mother said simply. "That family was killing you slowly. I could see it every time you called. You were disappearing. Now you're coming back." Elena finished her associate's degree 6 months after Maya was born. She started her bachelor's degree immediately after, working while Maya slept, studying while she ate, refusing to stop or slow down. Money was desperately tight. The $50,000 was almost gone. Elena took a job as a virtual assistant, working from home so she could care for Maya. It didn't pay much, but it was something. One of her clients was a tech entrepreneur who'd sold his first company for millions and was starting a new venture. His name was Robert Chen, and he was brilliant, driven, and impressed by Elena's work ethic. "You're overqualified for this job," he told her during one video call. "Why are you answering emails and scheduling meetings? You should be building something." "I'm a single mother with no capital and half a business degree," Elena replied. "Building something isn't exactly an option right now." What if it was? That conversation changed everything. Robert became Elena's mentor. He taught her about venture capital, about pitch decks, about what investors looked for. When she told him about an idea she'd been developing, a platform to connect gig workers with benefits and resources they couldn't get on their own, his eyes lit up. "That's brilliant," he said. "That solves a real problem. You should build it." "With what money?" "I'll fund the MVP. Call it a loan if it makes you feel better. But Elena, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs. You have something most of them don't. You understand what it's like to have nothing. That's valuable." With Robert's initial $25,000 investment, Elena built the minimum viable product of what would become ConnectWork, a platform that offered benefits packages, insurance, retirement planning, and legal support to gig economy workers. It was hard. God, it was so hard. Elena worked 18-hour days, coding when Maya slept, testing features during nap time, reaching out to potential users at every opportunity. Maya's second birthday came and went. Elena's student loans from finishing her degree were piling up. The platform had users but wasn't making money yet. Elena was running on fumes, living on credit cards, barely holding it together. Then ConnectWork hit 50,000 users, then 100,000. Then articles started appearing in tech blogs about the platform that's revolutionizing the gig economy. Investors started calling. Elena raised her first round of funding, $2 million. She hired a small team. She moved out of the studio apartment into a modest two-bedroom. She bought Maya toys that weren't from thrift stores. But she didn't forget. She never forgot that Christmas Eve, the laughter, the cruelty, the way Marcus had looked at the floor while his family destroyed her. By Maya's third birthday, ConnectWork had 500,000 users and was profitable. Elena raised a Series A, $15 million. She was featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. Her company was valued at $50 million. By Maya's fourth birthday, ConnectWork had expanded internationally. Elena raised a Series B, $75 million. The company was now valued at $200 million. Elena owned 40% of it. She was worth $80 million on paper. By Maya's fifth birthday, a major tech company offered to acquire ConnectWork for $850 million. Elena accepted. After the sale, after taxes and paying back investors and taking care of her small but loyal team, Elena walked away with $285 million. $285 million. Elena Carter, no, Elena Rodriguez, she'd gone back to her maiden name, was one of the wealthiest self-made women in Seattle. And she hadn't forgot a single thing the Carter family had done to her. The Carters, meanwhile, had not fared so well. Marcus's father, Richard, had made a series of disastrous investments. The family real estate empire had crumbled when the market shifted. James's gambling addiction had cost them millions. Veronica's lifestyle spending had drained trust funds. And Marcus had tried to launch several businesses using the family name and his trust fund, but he had no actual business sense. Everything he touched failed. By the time Maya turned 5, the Carters were on the verge of bankruptcy. The mansion was going into foreclosure. The cars were being repossessed. Victoria's jewelry was being auctioned to pay debts. Elena knew all of this because she'd made it her business to know. She'd hired a private investigator who provided monthly updates. She'd watched the family's downfall from a distance, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. When the investigator reported that Marcus had lost his job, and the family was desperately looking for investors to save their last remaining property, a downtown office building worth about $30 million but mortgaged to the hilt, Elena decided it was time. She scheduled a meeting with Richard Carter. He didn't know who she was. The meeting request had come through her lawyer listed as E. Rodriguez, CEO Rodriguez Holdings. Richard probably assumed it was a man. They always did. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. on a Friday in December, almost exactly 5 years after that Christmas Eve. Elena dressed carefully for it, a custom-tailored suit that cost more than the Carters had given her in the settlement, shoes that cost what she used to make in a month, hair and makeup perfect, professional, powerful. She looked like money because now she was money. Maya was with her nanny. Elena could afford the best care now, though she still tucked her daughter in every night and never missed a bedtime story. But today, Maya couldn't be there. Today was about settling old scores. Elena walked into the downtown Seattle office building, the same one the Carters were desperate to save, and took the elevator to the top floor where Richard Carter's temporary office was located. His secretary, he couldn't afford much staff anymore, looked up nervously. Ms. Rodriguez, they're waiting for you in the conference room." "Thank you." Elena walked into the conference room and stopped, letting the moment sink in. Richard Carter sat at the head of the table, looking older and more worn than she remembered. Victoria was beside him, her designer clothes from 5 years ago now dated and worn at the edges. James was there, looking puffy and exhausted. Veronica was checking her phone, bored. And Marcus sat at the far end of the table, and when he looked up and saw Elena, his face went white. "Hello, Richard," Elena said pleasantly, taking the seat directly across from him. "Thank you for taking this meeting." It took Victoria a moment longer, but then recognition dawned. Her perfectly made-up face, less perfectly made up than it used to be, went pale. "You." "Me," Elena confirmed, surprise. "What are you doing here?" Marcus found his voice standing up. "How did you—" "Sit down, Marcus." Elena's voice was cold. "You're not in charge here, you never were." Richard was looking between Elena and his family, confused. "Someone want to explain what's going on." "This is Marcus's ex-wife." Victoria spat the words like they were poison. "The gold digger who tried to trap him with a pregnancy." "Ah," Elena said. "Is that the story you've been telling yourselves? How predictable." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Let me tell you a different story. 5 years ago, you threw me out of your house while I was 6 months pregnant, on Christmas Eve, in the snow. You gave me $50,000 and a car that died 6 months later, and you made me sign an NDA in exchange." She slid a document across the table. "This is that NDA. I had my lawyers review it. Turns out it's not valid. You can't force someone to sign an NDA under duress, and your own security footage, which I subpoenaed, shows I was crying and clearly in distress. So I can say whatever I want about you." Victoria's face had gone from pale to red. "You can't." "I can, but I won't, because I don't need to." Elena smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "You did a perfectly good job of destroying yourselves without my help." "Why are you here?" Richard asked, his voice tired. "You wanted an investor for this building. I'm here to make an offer." Richard leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. "You have that kind of capital." "I sold my company 3 months ago for $850 million. I personally cleared $285 million after taxes and payouts. So yes, Richard, I have that kind of capital." The room went dead silent. Marcus couldn't seem to finish the sentence. "Rich, successful, self-made," Elena offered. "Yes to all of the above. That baby you all mocked, the one you said wasn't even Marcus's. Her name is Maya, and she's brilliant and beautiful and the best thing that ever happened to me. Leaving your family was the second best thing." She pulled out another document. "Here's my offer. I'll buy this building and all associated debt for $20 million. That's $10 million less than market value, but given your desperate circumstances, it's better than foreclosure." "That's insulting," Victoria hissed. "That's generous," Elena corrected. "But there are conditions." She looked at each of them in turn. "First, the building will be converted into affordable housing and a community center. Second, the Carter name will be removed from the property. Third, you will all sign a public statement apologizing for your treatment of gig workers and vulnerable employees over the years. I have documentation of labor violations, harassment, and discrimination going back decades." "We'll never do that," Richard said. "Then you'll lose the building and end up bankrupt anyway," Elena said with a shrug. "Your choice." "There has to be another way," Marcus said, looking at her with something that might have been pleading. "Elena, we were married. Doesn't that mean anything?" Elena laughed, a bitter sound. "You mean the marriage where your family convinced you I was a gold digger? The marriage you ended on Christmas Eve while your family laughed? That marriage?" She stood up. "No, Marcus, that means nothing to me. You made your choice 5 years ago." "What about Maya?" Marcus said suddenly. "She's my daughter, don't I have rights?" The room went very, very quiet. Elena placed both hands on the table and leaned forward, her voice deadly calm. You signed away all parental rights in the divorce. You wanted nothing to do with her. You've never sent a birthday card, never asked about her, never paid a single dollar more than the court-ordered minimum child support. So no, Marcus, you have no rights. And if you try to claim any, I have an army of lawyers who would love nothing more than to destroy you in court. She straightened. You have 48 hours to accept my offer. After that, I withdraw it and let the foreclosure proceed. Your choice. Elena walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Victoria. That video Veronica took of me signing the divorce papers. The one she posted and then deleted, but that I have copies of. If you don't accept my terms, I'm releasing it to every media outlet in the country. Let's see how your social circle reacts to watching you mock a pregnant woman. Victoria's face drained of all color. 48 hours, Elena repeated and walked out. They accepted the offer. Elena bought the building, converted it exactly as she'd promised, and used the rest of her considerable fortune to expand her work helping gig workers, single mothers, and vulnerable employees. She named the community center the Maya Carter Center, using her daughter's name, and the name that represented everything Elena had overcome. The Carters' public apology made headlines. So did the story of how Elena had gone from being thrown out on Christmas Eve to becoming a self-made multimillionaire who now owned the building her ex-in-laws had once held over her head. The Forbes article was titled, "From $50 case settlement to $285 exit, How Elena Rodriguez Turned Divorce into Destiny." Marcus tried to reach out several times. Elena never responded. She'd meant what she said. He'd made his choice 5 years ago. She owed him nothing. Victoria tried once to see Maya. Elena's security team turned her away. The Carters eventually moved to a modest home in the suburbs, their glory days behind them, their name associated now not with wealth and power, but with cruelty and downfall. And Elena. Elena woke up every morning in her beautiful home, had breakfast with her daughter, and went to work running her foundation and making life better for people who'd been where she'd been, at the bottom, with nothing, fighting to survive. Maya started kindergarten. She was happy, healthy, and surrounded by love. She knew her father's name but had never met him, and Elena had decided that would be Maya's choice when she was old enough to understand. "Mama, why are you smiling?" Maya asked one evening while they were baking Christmas cookies together. Elena looked around her kitchen, so different from the gleaming, cold kitchen in the Carter mansion. This one was warm, filled with laughter, covered in flour from their baking. This was home. "I'm smiling because I'm happy," Elena said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Are you happy we're making cookies?" "I'm happy we're together. That's all I need." That night after Maya was asleep, Elena stood in front of her own Christmas tree, modest but beautiful, decorated with handmade ornaments Maya had created, and thought about that night 5 years ago. She thought about sitting in that cold car, crying, with nowhere to go and a baby on the way. She thought about how devastated she'd been, how completely broken. And she thought about how wrong she'd been to feel that way. Because that night hadn't broken her, it had freed her. Freed her from a family that would have suffocated her. Freed her from a man who'd never really loved her. Freed her from a life that would have been gilded cage at best. That night had been the worst night of her life, and the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to her. Elena pulled out her phone and did something she'd never done before. She texted Marcus. The number was the same. She'd never deleted it. "Thank you for the divorce. Best gift you ever gave me. Merry Christmas." She blocked the number before he could respond, smiled, and went to bed. Outside, snow was falling just like it had 5 years ago. But this time, Elena was warm, safe, successful, and surrounded by love she'd built herself. This time she had everything. And the Carters had nothing but memories of their cruelty and the consequences it had brought. Sometimes, Elena thought as she drifted off to sleep, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's succeeding so completely that they destroy themselves.